Hey everyone, it's Dan Portillo. This is Real Estate Served Straight Up, and I'm going to be speaking to Tom Armas and Jared Armas, title experts and veterans in the industry. We're going to be covering topics on mortgage liens that are showing on title that have been paid. We're going to be talking about personal liens that show up on title, and we're going to be talking about uninsured deeds. So stay tuned. Okay, hello everyone. It's Dan Portillo with Real Estate Served Straight Up, and I'm here today with Tom Armas and Jared Armas, industry experts, veterans in title for a combined of 34 years. So thank you guys for joining me and, spending the time to go over some really hot topics that will be valuable for people to be able to use in their own transactions, whether it's real estate sales or mortgage refinancing. Oftentimes these problems can come up during title. So I wanted to touch on a few of them. But before we do that, why don't you tell me about your journey in title industry and how you guys got to this point in your career now?
Well, like you said, I've been in the business for over 30 years. Started, on the inside, worked my way up, and been on the outside for, 30 years, I think, on the outside in sales. Came to this point now. It's my son has been in the industry for about 4 years now, and we just thought it was good timing to join forces and get together, and here we are, the A team.
Great. That's awesome. I know Jared's been kicking butt out there, and I know you have a ton of experience that you've been able to share with him. So, what better mentor to have than your own father?
Exactly. No, I've definitely been blessed with the opportunity. Like I said, I did the whole college thing. Didn't work out for me. Definitely not for everybody. But I was blessed with the opportunity to have a dad in this business. And I took my opportunity and I ran with it. It's a beautiful business to be in. I absolutely love it.
That's good. That's great. Well, I'm excited to have you guys here. This has been a long time for me to prep and, start doing these interviews. And my plan is to be able to have a series of these interviews with industry experts like yourself so I can, bring to the table, the value of your experience, your knowledge, and be able to help people out there, that need your service. One of the things I'd like to do is let's go ahead and start diving into a couple of these questions here. And I'm just going to reflect on some of my notes here. I think the biggest topic that I come into personally is what happens when someone is selling their property or doing a refinance on their mortgage, and on title, there's a mortgage lien that shows up that has actually already been paid. So this is a mortgage that they had at one point, and it's been paid off in full, but it's still showing on title. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. So if it's a refinance, it's pretty simple. If it's a rate and term, it's a pretty done deal. Easy. We can work around it because the borrower is not going anywhere. They're staying in the house. They're not cashing out. They're not like trying to get their money and leave and run from the situation. If it's a sale of a property or a cash out of the property, there's a few things we're going to ask for. One, we're going to need to know that it truly was paid in full. So how did they pay it off? Whether it was over months, years that they paid it. Did they refinance and pay that mortgage off? If it was a refinance, then we need a copy of the HUD one to prove that it was paid. And again, we'd go back and try to reach out to that lender and try to get a paid in full letter to close that out and show that that lien has been taken care of on that side. On the refinance, same thing. We're asking to see how you paid it off. You have canceled checks, bank statements, anything to prove the amount that's been paid off was paid off.
Okay, great, great. So it's something that, I think just from my own experience in working with you guys, the more time you have to try to resolve those things and track those items down, the better, right?
Correct. Always be proactive, not reactive is what I tell everybody in the industry. If you know there's possibly something out there, a maybe, then let's get in front of the ship and get it taken care of. The earlier you know about these things, as you know, especially if you start dealing into liens or stuff like that, they're dealing with the city or the government. They don't work at the same pace as we do in this industry. They have their own pace, so things take a bit longer in that situation. So again, the earlier the better.
Okay, and I know one of the things I've been doing in my own business is when I work with sellers or homeowners that are refinancing, is I like to get my eyes on that copy of that preliminary title report ahead of time. So is that something that someone can do to when they're working with you, is to be able to order that early on, even at the onset of the transaction, or even maybe just before?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things we recommend to our agents and our loan officers, especially if you know you already have a deal coming in and you want to know, make sure exactly what's there. You don't want any surprises. So if you're taking a listing as yourself, you take a listing. As soon as you take your listing, you're good about that. You call me or Jared and say, hey, let's get this prelim going. The reason why is because you want to know about anything. You don't like any surprises at the end of your transactions. If you're doing a 45-day escrow, a 30-day escrow, I mean, that time frame, it seems like a lot when you hit the start button, but once you're in it, that time travels very fast. So there's not a lot of time for you to get a lot of stuff done if there's problems. So that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I like the way you work.
And the last thing you want to be doing is chasing down any documentation on payoffs of a mortgage at the last hour, and then that you end up causing any delays, or worse, you end up having a halt in the transaction where it causes problems on the financing end.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
Okay, so great. Well, I appreciate you guys shedding some light on that. So, what about another item here that can come up, and this is when a personal lien shows on title. So what do you guys do, and how does someone go about addressing that?
So what we recommend for our agents, and as you do for yourself, is what we do is when you go to your listing presentation, always take an SI. What an SI is, and a statement information. So basically what this document does is it runs a background check of the last 10 years of where you live. So it's basic information, your address, your name, and they'll basically do a check to make sure that everything is clear. So what they're looking for could be, child support liens, income tax liens, and a new one that definitely keep an eye out, or student debt liens, because as you know, we have to make sure that all our debts are paid before we could purchase or sell a home.
Okay, great. And that statement of information, may be a duplicate of what someone is filling out with their loan officer if they're doing a mortgage refinance, or getting to a point of an escrow on a sale. I know sometimes I will come across with the individual and they're asking, why am I providing this to escrow? But the reality is it's not going to escrow. Escrow is just pushing it off to you guys, the title company.
Yeah.
Correct. And then basically, just to clarify, a statement of information, an SI as we use it in the industry, it's just it's almost a prelim against your name. Your prelim is against the property, and it clears your property free and clear of any encumbrances. The SI is doing the same, but against your name as an individual. Because even though we run the prelim and it verifies information about the property, you may have state tax liens, personal tax liens, IRS liens, child support liens, and those hit your name personally. They necessarily don't hang over your house, but in reality they do, because anything that you own, it attaches to. So that's the difference between a prelim and an SI. One against personal, one against the property.
So it's going to work basically the same as a mortgage lien, in the sense that if someone has a lien that's popping up that maybe doesn't get cleared by that statement of information, if there might be some additional documentation, again, you don't want to get stuck having to provide that or chase down those documents that show that either the lien's not yours, or maybe that it's already been paid.
Correct, especially in Los Angeles where we deal, the big Latin community. I mean, Jose Garcia's, all the very common names. If you happen to get a borrower and he says, hey, this isn't mine, I don't know who this is, then simply we clear it up with a statement of information to verify that that's not him, that he's lived at a completely different address, he's worked completely somewhere different, and his social is different than the other person that supposedly has the lien against their names.
Yeah, and I know we've come across some where it's sometimes it's a very odd personal lien that shows up, where it might be a business tax from a business license with the city of LA, that someone's decided to start up a business and they completely either forgot about it or weren't aware of it, but it's a few $100 lien that pops up when you run the SI.
Correct. And again, those things can slow our transaction down. You would hate for that to pop up. And everybody's looking to close, buyers looking to move their house, and all of a sudden everything comes to a dead stop for a lien that's for $200, $500, but it still has to be addressed.
Correct. Yeah. Well, that's definitely good stuff. So, one of the things that I know that I come across a lot is, when I'm talking to a homeowner, they're getting ready to sell a property. I always, again, that with the title report, but just with the chain of title, you look at the information on who's the current owner, how are they holding title, and oftentimes there's situations where someone has added a family member. Maybe that person was added to help them qualify, but they're really not, quote unquote, the owner of the property. Other situations have come up where maybe the person is an elderly parent, and they added their adult child to title to assist in making payments, keeping up the property, or even just to try to avoid the pitfalls of how a property would get transferred of title. So can you explain a little bit about someone adding someone on that's technically not a real estate transaction?
Yeah, so goods and bads. Goods, that everything that you just discussed. It may be because we're trying to, get on title because we're trying to help our parents out. And all these things are coming with good intentions, but in reality, if there's ever a deed or quitclaim deed recorded in against your property without either a sale or a refinance, what we call in this industry is an uninsured document. So that uninsured document basically is as good as that paper that you just wrote it on. It's not worth anything. So unfortunately, just say I'll use our scenario. If I happen to put my son on title because I'm sick, God forbid I caught COVID and I'm in a bad situation and my wife wasn't on title with me, and I think, oh, let me just add my son Jared on, and in case something happens to me, the property will go to him. But in that scenario, what we call is an uninsured deed. There was no real estate transaction. He didn't buy it or I didn't sell it to him.
Refinance or a sale.
Or he didn't refinance it. Then that becomes an uninsured document, and that paper is not valid. In other words, if I happen to pass away, God forbid, and I did the scenario, it would still be a probate. Jared will have to go through probate to try to get, he'll be, use title so he understands, but, a normal person doesn't, and say, oh, my parents added me to title, or I added myself to title with them. It should be a void. It doesn't, because that document does not come with any insurance, basically no title insurance behind it, and that becomes basically an invalid document.
And you're always going to need that person's signature. So, for example, like people like to, like you said, help qualify. Uncle comes from Mexico to help you qualify, and then uncle goes back to Mexico. You're always going to need uncle's signature no matter what, because it was uninsured.
Okay,
meaning,
and that's
refinance or sell that house, one day, 1 year, 10 years from now, you still need that signature because he was added to title. So as soon as you add or remove somebody from title, they're basically tied to your property unless there was insurance involved.
Okay. So that can cause a lot of problems because, like you said, if you have someone going on title now and that person's no longer around and you need to sell, now you're having to rely on that person that was once added with an uninsured deed onto title, and that becomes problematic.
Yeah. Correct. Another thing, too, if you're going to do an uninsured document, is to always run your SI, because now that the person's being attached to your home is the person's name. So, for example, if the uncle that you attached now has $15,000 of child support liens, now that gets attached to your property. Now that's also your problem. So you want to make sure to clear those people when you're adding them to title as well.
But even in that scenario, even if you clear them today, it necessarily doesn't mean that tomorrow there's not a problem. So that's the risk that you take of adding someone onto title. You're taking all the good because you're saying, hey, show me your income, help me qualify for my house.
Credit, it looks great.
Yeah, everything, that's all positives.
But on the back end, we have $50,000 of child support liens.
Or even in that scenario, so you're saying that if someone was added to title now, 5 years from now, if that person ended up in, let's say, a car accident and had some sort of litigation and they end up getting a judgment against them, so that judgment now becomes on your property because that person is on your title.
And it's kind of funny, because in this business we say, against your property. It's really not against your property. It's against your name. But anything that you own, whether you own one property or you own 100 properties, that's going to attach to all those properties, not just that particular one.
So someone really needs to think about whether or not adding that person to help qualify is really going to be the best move if that person is maybe not fully committed or invested in that sense. If it's an immediate spouse or significant other, I would think anybody outside of that, it does pose a pretty big risk.
Yes, no, not only a big risk, I mean, a huge problem, because just say, for instance, again, I'll use us as an example. me, meaning myself and yourself. I've known you for, over 25 years. We're friends. We get together. It's all great and dandy. But one day, we do not become friends, and you added me to title to one of your properties. Now people can hold that against you in regards to almost like a ransom. So you say, this was really my property. And I say, no, yeah, Dan, you're right. But you know what? For my signature, it's going to cost you $5,000. You're going to huff and puff and, pump your chest and probably want to do something not very nice to me. But in reality, you're going to be stuck. You're either going to give up that money or you're not going to refinance or sell your property.
Yeah, because their signatures, basically, they're holding their signature hostage at that point. And, and that's a good point. Doesn't necessarily always mean that just because you have a good relation with that person today, that's going to be intact, in the future. And, I know we've seen situations come up where when we're selling properties, there's, especially if someone's passing away, unfortunately there are, disputes that can come up, who feels they're entitled to the ownership of the property.
Correct. And that's where, again, we end up going back to COVID because of that uninsured document,
Okay. Well, that's all good stuff. I know there's so many different scenarios that can come up. Each of these scenarios, of course, have to be dealt with differently. And going back to, our preparation and how we serve our clients is, just being prepared ahead of time, being able to get, my eyes on it, your eyes on it, and, the great support system you guys have in place with where you're at to be able to, look into those problems and resolve them. So again, I want to thank you guys for your time and, all the advice and knowledge that you brought today. Why don't you let everyone know, how they can reach you if they have any further title questions or any title needs, how can they contact you?
So right here, this link, or I shouldn't say the link, the email down below, a-team@Pacific Coast Title is one of the best ways to reach us. And if you're more on the social side, on the Instagram, you can reach me at Jared the Title Prodigy on Instagram. So happy to reach out and send me a message.
Great. Well, I want to thank you guys again. I really appreciate it. This is awesome that you guys, obviously you're not, you're personal friends of mine, but, we're fortunate to also be able to do business together. And I want to thank you guys for being on my first episode of, many to come. So, don't be surprised if I reach out to you again and we hit on another topic, but thanks again. And just everyone out there, if you need any additional information on any market updates, don't forget to visit myfreehousingreport.com. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Portillo Realty Group. Make sure you get the latest video updates. And if you'd like to reach me directly, don't hesitate to contact me. You can text me at 626-313-1200. Thanks again for jumping on, guys, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Danny. Have a good
Thank you, Danny. Good luck.
All right. Bye-bye.